Tonight, we're breaking down a moment that perfectly captures the escalating tension between former President Donald Trump and the press, specifically CNN. What started as a routine Q&A session quickly turned into something much bigger. Before things completely derailed, Trump spent a large portion of the meeting revisiting familiar territory: inflation, gas prices, and blaming his political rivals. He once again argued that he inherited the worst inflation in history and claimed that under his leadership, prices are now falling rapidly, led by energy costs.
I inherited the worst inflation in the history of our country. They say it was 48 years, but I say it was the history of what difference? It's 48 years, they were telling me. They said I was being inaccurate because I said the history. I think 48 years is a long time, but it's actually, I disagree. I think it's the history. So in the Biden administration, I inherited the worst inflation in the history of our country, or 48 years. And prices were very, very high. I brought the prices down. We had yesterday 3 states where oil was at $1.99 a gallon. How about that? And you know, with these guys, it was $4, $4.50. In California, it was like $7 because that's a badly run state. But the price for oil and gas and everything else, the price of gasoline was $4.50, $5. And we just hit $1 and we broke $2. I was looking forward to the couple of states, 3 states. And I will say that when that happens, oil and gas and energy is so big, it's so big a category, you don't even know what number 2 is. There is no number 2. And when you have the prices coming down for energy like that, you've killed inflation and you're lowering prices. So I inherited very simply the highest prices in history, and I'm bringing them down really fast, led by energy. And when energy comes down, everything else comes down. But I've only been here a short while, and we gave them a beautiful, beautiful thing, and they destroyed it.
He referenced gasoline prices in multiple states dropping below $2 per gallon. He claimed energy is the single biggest driver of inflation, that when energy prices fall, everything else follows. Then came the political attacks. Trump accused former President Joe Biden of destroying the economy. He referred to Vice President Kamala Harris as low IQ and argued that if the election had gone differently, the country would be in ruins. Now, whether you agree or disagree with that framing, one thing is clear. This rhetoric is not new. It's part of a long-standing narrative. Everything negative is inherited. Everything positive is self-created. But then the focus shifted, and this is where things got interesting. A reporter asked about growing criticism of House Speaker Mike Johnson from both Republicans and Democrats, and whether Trump still had confidence in him heading into the midterms.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Multiple House Republicans in recent weeks, days, have been critical of Speaker Mike Johnson. I wanted to ask you if you're still confident in the Speaker to keep his conference together ahead of the midterms, and how often are you speaking about him?
I think Mike Johnson is great. You know, he's had a majority of 2, 3, 4, then back to 2. We actually had 1, so we were 1 heart attack away from disaster. So everybody prayed for everybody's health. I think Mike Johnson's been a fantastic speaker. I mean, a very hard job because, you know, when you have a small majority, and we got the biggest bill in the history of our country approved, the great big beautiful bill. I call it the great big beautiful bill. There are different names for it, but to me it's a great big beautiful bill because it gives the biggest tax cuts in history, the biggest regulation cuts in history. No tax on tips, no tax on Social Security, no tax on overtime. I think Mike Johnson's been a great speaker. I think few people could have done that job.
Trump responded enthusiastically. He praised Johnson's leadership despite a razor-thin majority in the House. He emphasized what he described as the biggest bill in history, calling it his great big beautiful bill. He credited Johnson with delivering historic tax cuts and regulatory rollbacks. It was a moment of unity, a mutual reinforcement. Johnson has consistently defended Trump publicly. Trump, in return, shields Johnson from criticism. Earlier that same day, Johnson had been asked about Trump's controversial language toward other countries and political opponents.
You referred to countries like Somalia as countries. I think if you're okay with that kind of language.
Look, I'm baited every day with asking to be asked to comment about what the president or other members say.
It's
or
the
do.
President of the United States. Don't you have an opinion on it?
Well, of course I have an opinion. That's not the way I speak, and you know that. But the president is expressing his frustration about the extraordinary challenge that is presented to America when you have people coming in, not assimilating, and trying to take over the country. We had illegal aliens, like 20 million, 4 years ago. It's a crisis for the country, and that's the frustration you hear in his voice and the language he uses.
Thank you, Austin. I got it. Thank you.
Instead of distancing himself, Johnson described Trump's tone as frustration over border security and immigration concerns. This dynamic, loyalty above all, has become a defining feature of this political circle. But then came the moment that changed everything. A CNN reporter asked about a second strike video related to Secretary Hegseth that had not yet been released. It was not a loaded question. It was not aggressive. It was direct, and Trump's reaction was immediate.
Mr. President, has Secretary Hegseth told you why he hasn't released the video of the second strike?
No, he hasn't told me. I thought that issue was dead. You're surprised you bring it up. You must be CNN.
Lawmakers are still
Are you
talking about it
CNN?
on the Hill.
Are you CNN?
I am with CNN.
Oh, gee, I'm shocked to find out.
But lawmakers are still talking about it on the Hill.
Well, I'll tell you, I don't know about lawmakers. Which lawmakers? You're talking about
Most of the
Democrats?
Democrats have
Talking
been talking about
Democrats?
trying to release
I
it.
mean, the people that you work for, the Democrats? You know you work for the Democrats, don't you? You're basically an arm of the Democrat Party. Thank you very much, everybody. I appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you guys.
Come on, you want to talk?
Thank you guys. Turn off the cameras. Thank you guys.
He asked the reporter which network she worked for. When she replied CNN, he responded sarcastically, "I'm shocked." He accused the network of being an arm of the Democratic Party, and within seconds, he shut the meeting down. Thank you very much, everybody. No answer, no clarification. Event over. That abrupt ending is what has people talking tonight, because this isn't an isolated event. Over the past several months, we've seen a pattern. When confronted with uncomfortable questions, particularly from CNN, Trump often pivots to attacking the network rather than addressing the issue. This tension escalated further when Trump discussed the possibility of CNN being sold.
Talk about the new owners of Warner Brothers Discovery to make changes at CNN, big changes, and have you spoken to Jared about it? What are you doing with him, or are you just sort of wall him off a little bit?
So what do you want to know?
What changes do you want to see at CNN under new ownership?
Well, I'm not involved in that. I will be probably involved, maybe involved in the decision. It depends. You have some good companies bidding on it. I think the people that have run CNN for the last long period of time are a disgrace. I think it's imperative that CNN be sold, because you certainly wouldn't want to put people, just leave those people with some money, good money, and CNN, so that they can spend even more money spreading poison, because it's lies. It's a disgrace. So I wouldn't want to see the same company end up with CNN, the same company with money, because right now they don't have too much money. But they have value, I guess, based on the bids. They've got value. But I think CNN should be sold, because I think the people that are running CNN right now are either corrupt or incompetent.
He criticized CNN's leadership as corrupt or incompetent. He suggested the network should not remain under its current management. He openly supported the idea of new ownership. That kind of rhetoric directed at a major national news outlet is extraordinary. Supporters argue he's calling out media bias. Critics argue it signals hostility toward independent journalism. And this matters in a much bigger context. The 2026 midterm elections are approaching. Media scrutiny is intensifying. Poll numbers are fluctuating nationally. Recent polling from multiple outlets shows growing polarization, with Trump maintaining strong support within his base, but continued resistance among independent voters. Media confrontations like this one play differently depending on the audience. To some, it's strength. To others, it's avoidance. But politically, moments like these shape perception, and perception shapes elections. Let's zoom out for a second. The relationship between Trump and CNN has been strained for years. He frequently labels the network fake news. CNN, in turn, has often published investigative pieces critical of his policies and statements. The cycle feeds itself. Criticism triggers confrontation. Confrontation generates headlines. Headlines reinforce division. Tonight's exchange is simply the latest chapter. But here's what makes it significant. The question wasn't explosive. It wasn't accusatory. It was procedural. And yet it triggered a shutdown. That tells us something about the current media climate. It tells us about trust, or lack of it. It tells us about how fragile press interactions have become. And it raises a broader question. Is political accountability weakening, or is this simply the new normal? Across recent appearances, Trump has shown increased sensitivity to what he calls hostile press. He has walked away from briefings. He has limited follow-up questions. He has framed critical journalists as political operatives. At the same time, supporters argue that legacy media outlets have been openly adversarial. This creates a feedback loop where every interaction becomes confrontational before it even begins. Tonight's moment fits squarely into that pattern: a short question, a sharp reaction, an abrupt exit, and headlines across the country. Now, stepping back from partisanship, this situation highlights something bigger than one man or one network. It highlights the fragile relationship between political power and press freedom. In democracies, journalists ask uncomfortable questions. Leaders answer them or decline them. But the exchange continues. When exchanges end abruptly, it leaves room for speculation, and speculation drives narratives. As of tonight, lawmakers on Capitol Hill are still discussing the unreleased video referenced in the question. So this story may not be over. In fact, it could escalate depending on whether that footage is eventually made public. For now, what remains undeniable is this: the meeting ended not because time ran out, not because security intervened, but because one question crossed a line. And that line seems to be getting closer and closer. As we move deeper into election season, expect more moments like this. Expect sharper exchanges, expect more tension between political figures and media institutions, and expect those moments to define the political narrative just as much as policy debates do. Because in today's environment, optics are everything, and tonight's optics were clear: a question, a confrontation, a shutdown. We'll continue tracking this story as more information becomes available. If you found this breakdown helpful, stay tuned for more primetime updates as events unfold in real time. This is a developing story, and we'll be here every step of the way.